Shower tomorrow, 14. Partly cloudy Saturday, mostly sunny Sunday, tops of 14. The fine weather continuing Monday, 15. More news as it happens on 5AA.
1395, Adelaide's 5AA. This is Peter Godfrey.
7 minutes past 5 now, 8 degrees at the moment. It's about the lowest we've been. In fact, we've just touched on the coldest so far overnight. So, winter is here. Let's head to across the ditch, find out what's happening across there. New Zealand, Selwyn Manning, editor of EveningReport.nz. Selwyn, how are you?
Yeah, very good, Peter.
Keeping your feet...
Like you were saying, major flooding over here in the Auckland, city of Auckland overnight, particularly yesterday evening. But much of Auckland is okay. I mean, what happened is that down in the south part of Auckland, South Auckland, a town called Papakura, and that was hit particularly bad. There was 77.4 millimetres of rain that hit the city just between 4 p.m. and 9 p.m. That's half of the average for the whole of the month.
What is 77.4? Wow.
Yeah, 77 millimetres of rain came down. So what's happened there is the geography of Papakura is quite low, where much of the town is low right on the Manukau harbour of Auckland. That's the west side of harbour on the west side of Auckland City there. And there's ranges to the east, and it seems the water has come down from the ranges and flooded some of those lower lying areas, particularly in an area around the Settlement Road, Ponga Road areas, and also Rose Hill. So people had witnessed cars floating down the road, and obviously there was a number of houses that have been flooded out overnight, and the immediate reports is everyone has been safe, and a lot of water damage, of course, and most people have been able to go back into their homes. Some haven't, but most have, and so it's people are saying on Radio New Zealand that that could have been a lot worse. So it sounds like they were well prepared and well equipped.
Yeah. That's good.
The emergency response from Civil Defence apparently was absolutely immediate. So there's good news around that.
Yeah.
Obviously, that a well-oiled machine in that way.
Yeah, and that's it's times like that. Then you can be thankful of having that well-oiled machine. Fantastic.
Yeah.
I can't get 77.4 millimetres in that short space of time. Heck, we don't even get that in a month at the best of times.
And absolutely, and it certainly was pelting down. Yeah. I can give it, accurate account of that. I was out driving at the time, and when that was coming down, and oh boy, it was a gridlock right through Auckland City. It took about an hour and a half to do 5 kilometres. Oh goodness! And so that gives you an idea of the gridlock that occurred. Yeah. That's not necessarily just due to the fog. It's symptomatic of Auckland, but also in the eastern suburbs of Auckland, St Heliers in particular, there's reports that there was around 1,600 homes that were without power. So the storm brought down power in certain parts there. I understand that they're all restored. The other thing that was big, Peter, for travellers was out at the mainly domestic. This was affected the domestic terminal of the Auckland airport. That was underwater. Around the car park area or the entrance to it, and that obviously was causing concerns there. But once again, there were no incidents of accidents, etc. So got through pretty good. And it was one of those kind of storms that came across from the Tasman Sea, across from you guys, Peter.
We sent it to you.
Yeah, you sent it to us. So it came through, and the warnings were showing the rain radar about 2 hours prior to, and warnings were coming out via media and obviously via Met Service and also the Weather Watch. Yeah. And they were saying it's going to be a big one, and you could see it approaching the west coast, the area of Auckland, and certainly once it hit, it was all on, and then 3 hours later, all quiet. And I could kind of look out this morning. The place looks, been out and about this morning, and it's very, very wet underfoot everywhere, but it's reasonably settled. No wind, and it seems like reasonably blue skies starting to form as the day begins. Oh, wonderful! So get a little bit of sunshine and watch those weeds come up in your garden. There's your weekend done, Selwyn. You've got to get the weeds pulled up. That'll be the way. Yeah. I spent I won't go into that. I did my DIY thing on the weekend, Peter, and that was replacing a toilet. some say it's total immersion. I say it was total submersion in the DIY. But we managed to get a functioning toilet after that. We had a bit of a leak, but that was that was another story.
Yeah. Oh well done on that. Good work. All right, let's get on to some juicy political stuff here. Fairly major court. Case being heard in the High Court in Wellington, all sort of centring around whether journalists can keep sources private. Tell us more.
That's very true, Peter. It is a big case here, and it affects not just journalists, but right across New Zealand society, really. You know, when there's been investigative reports that are, holding the powerful to account. Yeah. Quite often, the information that is the bedrock of those reports is information that has been provided by confidential sources, and there's been elements in law here, as in most Western countries, where the sources can be protected under certain conditions, and certainly the privilege around the interactions between journalists, particularly in the public interest journalism area, and their sources has been enshrined in law. Now, this has been tested in the courts, and it's a big issue here, in the sense that I'll go into the case. The case it's officially referred to here is Nicky Hager versus the Attorney General, the New Zealand Police, and the Manukau District Court. And it is pivotal, as I was saying, to, the outcome is going to be pivotal. Now, particularly important in that the outcome of the case will define in case law whether journalists should be able to keep their sources private and rely on the privilege of confidentiality. Now, such assurances, as I was saying there, of confidentiality are vital when journalists are receiving that information from whistleblowers or those people who have exhausted official avenues to hold the powerful to account. Now, that's just touching on some of the definitions that have existed. Now, if people are interested in this, just at this juncture, Peter, I should say that if people are interested in this kind of thing, I'd urge them to look into the report by John Stevenson and Emily Menkes. Now, their reportage on the EveningReport.nz site is comprehensive, and it's a blow-by-blow account of the submissions, both from the plaintiff's side, Nicky Hager's counsel, but also from the Attorney General, the police, and the Manukau District Court's side. So it's very complex, but it's interesting to see how the two arguments are coming here. Now, what it all is based on, sorry for having to kind of sow the seeds of what's going on in that way. Now, the difficulty here is that the case, it centres around when police, a search warrant was acquired by the police through the courts to search Nicky Hager, his home. Now, the search basically came about after the report, the publication of the book, Nicky Hager's publication of the book, Dirty Politics.
That's right, which you spoke about a while ago. That book relied on information like what we were talking about before, information that was confidential to a source, but it was information that had allegedly been stolen from an Auckland-based blogger, Cameron Slater, from his private communications. Now, they were hacked. The hacker remains anonymous. The identity of the hacker is only known by the strange name Rorschach. Okay. And police, in their endeavours to identify who Rorschach was and to pursue an investigation into whether or not they should prosecute that individual for taking that private communication information from the blogger Cameron Slater, was the basis for the raid on Nicky Hager's home. Now, Nicky Hager, at this point, I should say, is renowned as New Zealand's preeminent investigative journalist. So there was much in the court relating to the quality of his professionalism and his work to elevate that area of public interest journalism to make sure that that was completely in the frame in the courts. So all of this has been going and debated there. The counsel for Nicky Hager asserted that the information, while taken from the private communications of Cameron Slater, was high in that public interest, and so high was the bar that it warranted it being published. Now, remember that for listeners out there, this book, Dirty Politics, was published immediately prior to the commencement of
the election campaign in New Zealand last year, Peter, and we spoke about it quite a lot at the time. But to refresh memories, what it did was it exposed the communications basically from Cameron Slater, and it suggested and alleged that there was an attack network of individuals with National Party connections that were also used to dig up dirt on journalists, academics, business people. Really, Peter, it was basically people who found themselves estranged from the view and the will of those in power. And that was the basis of the book, and it really lifted the lid, if you like, on the inside machinations of politics in New Zealand, and hence the title of the book, Dirty Politics.
Yeah.
So that is at the basis of all of this. There's a mood in New Zealand that when the police raided, and I should say overseas too, that when the police raided Nicky Hager's home, that it was going to the heart of an abuse of this dirty politics. So there was, and not saying that was necessarily the case, but there was a mood and a belief among some quarters that there was dark powers influencing the police raid on Nicky Hager's home. Now, the crux of this is in this case, is it tests the public interest areas around that should a journalist be able to assure a contact that person's identity and confidentiality would be respected and sustained, or is the case going to actually erode that ability for journalists to give that assurance? And if it does, it was put to the courts, Peter, that potential sources would come to a point where they consider, should we risk it, or should we? And that's probably going to be a reaction where no, they wouldn't be able to risk providing information. And then secondly, do they go public with it and face the consequences, or do they just remain silent? And it was put to the judge in the court that the public interest around this would be jaundiced should it go against the plaintiffs on this case.
Okay, so that,
I hope I've explained it very comprehensively.
So that determination, how long? This is going to be a long, drawn out case, is it? Assumedly, because of the complexity.
So the case took 3 days, and the actual court proceedings concluded yesterday, and the judge has reserved his judgment on this, or his findings on this.
Now, this is all related to his work on that the research for that book, Dirty Politics, because there's been a similar thing here in looking at very similar changes to laws which have sort of recently come in regard to journalists and protecting sources, but it's all been framed in the context of, the war on terror and security and things like that. So is there any element of that in the situation for you guys, the national security kind of angle, or is it simply about the ways and means that this information has been sort of gathered?
This is keeping very tight-knit scope to the detail of this given relating to the police raid on the journalist's home.
Okay, yep.
And that what you're talking about there is the same principle of which is being tested in this case.
Okay.
So that's extremely relevant in a sense. And remember that within countries like Britain, Canada, Australia and New Zealand, because our judicial structures are very similar, that if there's case law precedents in one country, it can often be raised in the courts in others as a precedent. Okay. And so this type of outcome in these kind of cases can actually affect the outcome in your own country, irrespective of where the legislation may be, but the interpretation of it. So that's pretty much why I'm raising it on your program this morning, Peter, is because there can be crossover, and quite often, like we've found on many issues, there's a relationship between one country and another. One of the interesting things on here was that there was much evidence, discussion in the court and submissions in the court, making sure that the judge understood that what they were talking about here, meaning the plaintiffs' counsels were talking about here, was public interest journalism. And there was a differentiation between perhaps the more trivial side or the entertainment side of journalism and that area of stuff that really goes to the heart of the function of good governance in our countries. So when it's the job of a journalist or a media outlet to test that type of thing, to make sure that the powerful are brought to account when they perhaps are not doing their job well, or that there's corruption or incompetence in the mix, that this type of outcome is important, where sources who may be at the heart of that situation, who are motivated by a sense of good governance and well-being for their country, may be hampered if they believe that their identity could be exposed because of a police raid that goes to the heart of the journalist's notes and takes those notes.
Yeah.
So that's the concern here. Now, if it goes the other way, for example, and if it's found that the police were justified in taking the information and the amount of information that they took, then one would imagine the outcome here in New Zealand would be that there will be huge concerted efforts for journalists to make sure that the confidentiality of their sources is absolute, and that may be done where the journalists themselves do not know who the identity of the person is that is providing the information. Yeah. And there's systems that are set up already, like what Edward Snowden used in the initial time of passing information across to Glenn Greenwald and others, where the identity of him was masked right at the start through encryption.
Okay.
Now, that has its own dangers in a sense that relationship between a source and journalist is not established to the point where the journalist is testing the motivations of the source. So you can see it's not an ideal situation, but that's
exactly.
No doubt where it would track, Peter.
Could head to. All right, Selwyn, just need to take a break and we're back. More happening in your part of the world. Be right back with you. Selwyn Manning's with us, editor of EveningReport.nz.
Right now, Toyota Material Handling has a great offer on forklift rentals. Rent any forklift for 6 weeks or more and get an extra week's rent free. It could save you hundreds. Toyota Material Handling is Australia's #1 in new and used forklift sales, short or long-term forklift hire and all forklift servicing. Call Toyota Material Handling now on 1800 425 438 or visit toyotamaterialhandling.com.au.
Terms and conditions apply. Offer ends August 31.
Hey, how much do you love Liverpool Football Club?
Yep, we hear you.
FiveAA and Subway are giving you the ultimate Liverpool experience. For your chance to get up close and personal with the players at a VIP meet and greet, plus an hour clinic with the Liverpool coaches and an invite to a training session, just register your details at fiveaa.com.au. Thanks to Subway, the official training restaurant partner, and $13.95, Adelaide's FiveAA.
Hello, Frank Walker from National Tiles. Adelaide tile layers are now saving up to $8,000 per year on adhesives and grouts at National Tiles. Yes, no other tile company looks after tilers like National Tiles, with genuine savings of up to $8,000 per year on adhesive and grout prices. So if you're a professional tiler, join the National Tiles Trade Club now and save up to $8,000 per year. Come in store or visit nationaltiles.com.au now for details.
I love my open plan living, but how can I control where the heating and cooling goes? How can I lower my energy bills? Well, Flex Zone doorways exclusive to Doors Plus are the solution. See the Zone living display at a Doors Plus showroom today.
Doors Plus, no fuss. Hi, my name's Dave.
And my name's Dan.
And we work for Dial Before You Dig. There's 2 ways of contacting us before you dig. You can call me on 1100,
or you can go online at 1100.com.au.
With new pipes and cables going into the ground every day, the consequences of injury, death or financial ruin are too great to risk.
So before you dig yourself into a hole you can't get out of,
contact us to keep you high and dry. Dial 1100
or visit 1100.com.au.
Lux Bathroom Rules. Number 1, we listen to you. Number 2, we work with your budget. Yep, we're part of a big group, so we have a huge range and great pricing. We specialise in doing packages. So if you do a complete bathroom, you'll always get 20% off the lot. Rule number 3, we always put the toilet seat back down. For a stunning bathroom within your budget, Lux Bathrooms, on the corner of Stevens Terrace and Paynham Road, St Peters.
$13.95. Adelaide's 5AA. This is Peter Godfrey.
And Selwyn Manning is with us, editor of EveningReport.nz, with some of the things happening across the ditch in New Zealand. Now, Selwyn, to wind up, a couple of well-seasoned political foes there coming head to head again very soon for, another bit of a stoush, it seems, is it?
Yes, it is, Peter. It's Phil Goff. He's a senior Labour MP, and certainly he was significant around the traps when your Alexander Downer was your foreign minister. Yes. Phil Goff was our foreign minister, so that's the time frame when Phil was most effective in his political career. Now, Phil Goff is strongly tipped and most likely to contest the mayoralty of Auckland next year in 2016, and lining up potentially to have another go at the mayoralty is John Banks. He was mayor of Auckland for a time, lost that to the incumbent that's there at the moment, Len Brown. And John Banks and Phil Goff, if they're going head-to-head, well, it's certainly going to be an interesting campaign, Peter. And yesterday, Phil Goff basically called out Banks on this and said if he is toying up with this idea, he says he should put his name on the line, because he says, I'm already taking this very seriously and doing my homework about the Auckland mayoralty. Now, what this whole thing is really shaping up, Peter, and no doubt we will talk more in depth later on in other bulletins about this in the future, but Auckland, it suffers these gridlocks, huge soaring rates, soaring housing prices, and the incumbent mayor, Len Brown, just does not now seem to have the confidence of his own his own political team, nor the public. So it seems like Phil Goff and at this stage, John Banks seem to be lining up to have a shot.
Sounds an exciting fight looming. All right, so we'll have to leave it there, mate. Thank you for joining us this morning. And just, again, your website, EveningReport.nz, you got, as you mentioned, plenty more about this issue of journalism liberties and so on. So worth having a look at for those that are interested in that. Fairly serious and ramification for us here too. So head there, EveningReport.nz. Selwyn, many thanks. Have a great week, and hope you stay dry.
You too, Pete.
All the best. Bye. Selwyn Manning, editor of EveningReport.nz.
Get out back and back again with Isuzu Utes Outback Ready Deals. Tackle the tough terrain with the Isuzu D-Max 4x4 LSU Crew Cab Ute for just $42,990 drive away. Or head off the beaten track with a top-of-the-range 7-seat Isuzu MUX 4x4 Auto.